Welcome to the Sens Spotlight podcast brought to you by the Sick Podcast Network. Before we get started, we are going to shout out our sponsor. Go all the way with Betway and get a free bet up to $200 if your first bet loses. Scan the QR code on the screen or click on the link in the details section to create an account and redeem your welcome offer. Offer is only available for new customers. Terms and conditions apply. Offer available in Ontario. Must be 18 plus. Please play responsibly. Also for anyone on YouTube, please hit the hype button and like and subscribe. That really just helps us out, grow the show. And today we're joined by someone, my colleague at Sportsnet, someone who played in the league. So we'll keep it a little bit hush until he comes on, but it should be a fun episode. And hit it, Shane.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. Sens Spotlight.
Here's Alfredson, bursts of speed, gets a shot away, score! Daniel Alfredson ends the game in overtime and sends the Ottawa Senators to the Stanley Cup Final for the first time in franchise history.
The sickest Ottawa Senators podcast. It's gonna be sick.
And we are joined by Sportsnet's Luke Gazdic. Thanks so much for taking the time, Luke. I know it's a big day outside of the Sens world because Connor McDavid has signed. Just maybe talk a little bit about that. And thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, man. Big stuff happening here today. Phone's blowing up a little bit. It's exciting stuff, man. Like I never truly believed he was going anywhere or even was maybe thinking about going anywhere. I think it was the term. I think the money. I just think there was so much that went into this. But it's exciting. Like if you're an Oiler fan today, you gotta, be taking a breath of relief. I understand there was I live in Leafland here. I'm born and raised in Toronto. I think a lot of people were hoping he was coming back home at some point, but this just it shows where he wants to be and it shows where his priorities lie. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not as tight and as close with Connor as I probably used to be. He has a extremely small circle of people that he keeps his details and personal stuff with. So I think a lot of people were in the dark for this. I really ultimately thought it was going to come down to a small 2-year deal or something like this, but the money is lower than I thought it was going to be. I'm not going to lie. And it gives the Oilers some flexibility. It gives Stan Bowman some flexibility. It gives the roster some flexibility. Shows where his priorities lead. And I just know how much he loves it there, loves the group. And it's exciting stuff for the game, man.
What do you think as like a former player seeing the best player in the world take a huge discount, but also have that little LeBron James type, crossover for NBA where it's like, I'm giving you 2 years. I'm not committing more because I know I'm the best player in the world. I'm not going to sign an 8-year deal. I'm going to keep you on your toes.
Yeah, I think that's a fascinating part of it is I've always thought, and I don't think it's too hot of a take to say, I think he was always going to be the guy that was going to bridge contracts from NHL to the other 4 major sports, or whether it's basketball, football. How many times have you heard the players start to talk about getting salaries up and starting to match the other sports? And Connor would lead the way at that. He's the best hockey player in the world, in my opinion. And I think that's the fascinating part is how much money he left on the table here and even moving forward. But it shows, like I said, where his priorities lead, and he just wants to win. I think if they would have won the last 2 years, this conversation and what happened today might have looked a little different. And even moving forward, it's a weird situation in Edmonton. I think just because it's if they don't win a Stanley Cup, the year is seen as a failure. They made it 7 games 2 years ago, 6 games last year. And, they could go and lose again in 6. And there's no positive to that. All right. It's Stanley Cup or bust here basically until they win, which I ultimately do think they're going to. Leon and Connor are just that good that I think at some point they're going to break through here. But it's exciting.
Is there anything, because you obviously knew Connor, maybe better back in the day, but being around him, being around Draisaitl, is there any story that you can maybe share about being around them, especially as kind of competitors? Because you see it in Leon, who's maybe a bit more vocal, but just how competitive those two guys are.
Yeah, they were both awesome, first and foremost. Like two guys, two kids you couldn't have asked more from as young guys coming into pro hockey, coming into the NHL. I guess I'll start with Leon. You mentioned the competitive side. Like, you want to talk about a competitor at 18 years old when he first came in, and he was really raw. Like, he wasn't ready at the time. I think he ended up playing 41 games. That was the year he went back to Kelowna, won a Mem Cup, and he came back at 19 and he was ready to go. Like, that first year, like I said, he wasn't ready. He was just he hadn't grown or built out to like what he looks like now. And if you remember the Pacific Division, the Western Conference back then, the 2015. You got to think of some of the big centers coming down the middle. I mean, Kopitar was still there, but Getzlaff and Anaheim, like, he was matching up against these guys every night. He was getting dominated, and went back, played some good hockey in junior, and came back, and it was game on for Leon. He's an ultimate competitor, but on the person side too, I really liked him. He's dry. He has a really good sense of humor. He's not afraid to bark back at you. It doesn't matter who you are. And some more stuff's coming out about this, but I think what I'd love people to know is what he puts into it. Like, he's first guy at the rink, one of the last ones to leave. He's always working on his craft, loves the game. Connor was similar, but I think even more raw. Like, so they drafted him, right? They won the lottery, and the plan for him was supposed to be to move in with a nice young family in his first year. I think, guys like Andrew Ferentz and Matt Hendricks were talked about, guys that have families and kids, but Connor didn't exactly want that. I think he just wanted to live with a couple of the guys. So he ended up moving in with me and Taylor Hall, which was very cool. Got to live and play with him for a full calendar hockey year. Which obviously was the year he broke his collarbone early in the season. So we spent a lot of time together that year, man. Driving in the car to and from the rinks. It was very cool. And you know what? The more time I spent getting to look back on it, it was a very cool time in my life to be sitting there breaking down the game, watching SportsCenter highlights or whatever it was with what would eventually be the best player in the world was very cool. Cooked a lot of food for him, took care of him off the ice and made sure no one messed with them. And like I said, still not as close, but still good friends to the day. But both of those guys, man, ultimate competitors. Like, Connor hated to lose. Like, he hated to lose more than he liked to win. One of the things we always talk about in hockey is about, you hear guys say you got to learn how to be a pro. And I think one of the things that comes with that is not bringing stuff home from the rink. You know what I mean? Like, it took me a long time to be able to shut it off when you get home and not let a bad game or, a bad period or mistake, whatever it may be, whatever's going on at the rink. When you come home, you can kind of put that away and be a regular kid. Like, stuff like that bothered him from day to day. Like, he wanted to be the best. He wanted to win everything. And you can still see it in his play today, man. And he hasn't won the ultimate title yet, but like I said, I think it's only a matter of time before these guys break through. The one story, I think I talked to you a bit about this a couple of weeks ago when we were just talking informally. I mean, it's one of my favorite ones. If you go back, I think it's on YouTube. It was my very first Hockey Night in Canada appearance. In the pregame show, I had told my producer this story about the first goal Connor scored when he came back after breaking his collarbone, and basically dipped through all five of the Columbus guys, triple dekes the goaltender, and it's like the sickest goal I've ever seen in my life. Like, I've never seen anyone move like that, never seen anyone with edges like that. So we got home after the game and we're watching, the highlights, and it comes on and this and that. So I asked him to break it down for me, like, as we're just sitting there, and I have I'm pausing it, and he was just breaking it down from his POV of what he saw as soon as he got the puck. And the way he was talking was like, and I'll never forget the edges. I told you this one was when he got over the red line, he talked about looking at the defenseman's edges and which way he fakes and sees where they're going to lean and what way he's going to take them inside. And I'm just like, man, there's an 18-year-old kid talking about hockey. I was 7 years pro at that time, third year in the NHL, and I'd never heard anyone talk about the game the way he had. It's a different type of vision. It's knowing where everybody is on the ice at all times, and he's able to process the game at a speed that, like, very, very few can do it as good as him. So he's a special kid, and obviously a very special hockey player.
I don't know how to transition to the Sens, but I'm going to do it as best as I can. But the one thing that kind of trickled in my mind when you were talking about learning to be a pro. That's something here in Ottawa. Guys like Brady, Tim Stutzle, Jake Sanderson have really mentioned that. And I'm curious from your vantage point as a guy who played in the league for a long time, how have you seen them evolve as professional players and maybe that kind of mindset of really learning how to play the game the right way and maybe not bring things home and whatever that may be?
It's a great question, man, because I think the Sens are a poster child for maturation from a team that was here that continues to grow, continues to get better, and Brady leads in that category. He is like, first of all, I love Brady. Like one of my favorite players in the NHL, could be my favorite player in the NHL. Just love his attitude that he brings to the rink every day, but you can see how much he's grown too. And he's a great example because having to balance playing physical, fighting, putting yourself down, taking penalties when it's maybe not the best time, but also having to produce offense in big moments, and also realizing that every single guy in that locker room is watching him at all times, especially the younger guys as they're coming up, draft picks. When you're at camps, that's one thing I didn't realize, I think, as much when I was younger, is how much everyone around you is soaking up what you're doing. Even if they're not staring at you and doing that, they're watching you setting an example. And so when you go back in the dressing room, everyone's kind of sitting around there. They're waiting for Brady. You want to hear what's Brady going to say? Or if he doesn't say anything, how does he look the next period? Right. Because he's always going to be the guy that's like, fellas, just jump on my back. But I think that starts off the ice. I think the Sens have done such a good job off the ice, bringing in some really, really good people. Starts with Mike Anlauer, Steve Stais, incredible. Matty Nickel was my trainer back home here in Toronto. He's their sports science guy. That is one of the best hires they could have made from top to bottom, because a lot of this stuff starts off the ice, right? I think going to the rink every day, and when you talk about being a pro, it's keeping your body in tip-top shape and not letting your emotions run wild. You can see how much Brady tangles with that during the year, where it's like, I remember a couple of years ago, it was like, we're sitting on sports and it's like, should Brady be fighting so much? And it's like, debate this. And my answer is always, he can fight as much as he wants to. Go for it, kid. Sure. I don't mind, but having to manage those emotions. And I think you guys watched it too. Like in the playoffs last year, like they came out hot, they came out swinging, and it was like, I don't know. Ultimately, a series is a marathon, not a sprint. You watch the Florida Panthers; it's exactly what you do. That you can win the first 2 rounds. They're coming back strong, and I think even that series against Toronto last year is such a great learning experience for them. So, whether it's Drake, whether it's Cuzzy, whether it's Brady, whether it's Tim, like these guys are all growing. They're all learning, and they're doing a lot of good things, man.
Just maybe on that Tkachuk angle and being around him, like he'll go up to little kids and give them, like he's such a kind, down to earth guy, and it's not fake. But I'm curious for you, like how much do you think camaraderie and a guy like Tkachuk bringing everyone together is important on the ice in terms of winning? Because you talk around the group, like they're really close in Ottawa, and how much do you think, like, is that, at the end of the day, you need to be talented too,
100%.
But
well, I never liked that too, when they're like, you hear teams, you're like, you don't have to like each other. And I'm like, well, yeah, it helps though. Like it helps if you like your teammates. I think, especially in Canadian cities, man, I was very fortunate to play in the NHL in a Canadian city. It first and foremost starts with endearing yourself to your fan base. And like, he does that. Like you see him all the time, stops for autographs, doing charitable endeavors. And I think that in itself, is a great example to set for your team, and to show other guys, this is what it's all about. And I don't know who it is behind the scenes, whether it's him or not, but there always is someone who's organizing everything. So whether it's your Halloween party, whether it's a couple dinners on the road, like early in the season, you want to try to get the boys together on the road for a big dinner early. I think that's like, stuff like that is huge. It might sound so small, but it's like, oh, we're flying into XYZ. We have 2 days before our game. Like, one of your guys would be like, let's on that Thursday, like, let's get everyone together when we get to Arizona, or when we get to, well, Arizona's not even a freaking team anymore. I'm saying that. Like, whatever, Utah, you name it. You're going out to the West Coast. So let's get everyone together. And I would assume Brady's a huge part of that, because I really do think the amount you like each other and you want to go to bat for each other, like at the end of the day, that means a lot, man. When you're about to go toe to toe with another team for 60 minutes, you want to be able to know that the guy sitting to your right and the guy sitting to your left in the locker room, like you want to know that they're going to go to bat for you too. And I think the Canadian teams are doing a great job at it. Like Ottawa, Montreal, Edmonton, like you can tell these teams really have a close knit group. And I think Brady learns a lot of that from Matthew. Florida set the example, but he's doing a lot of good things, man. And I think that's, like we said, like one of the reasons they're trending upward here is Brady.
Maybe another guy that really seemed to blossom last year. He made it on to as a late kind of not scratch, but almost, a replacement to the Four Nations scores in the final. That's Jake Sanderson. In preseason, he's looked unbelievable. Just his skating, getting up in the rush defensively, he's astute. How good can Jake Sanderson be this season for the Ottawa Senators?
Okay, so I'm going to tell you a story. So like 3 years ago, I tweeted, you guys could probably find it. I wasn't meaning for it to be bad. Like I wasn't saying it in a bad way. It was when Jake signed his deal. I was like 64/8 is like an outrageous number for a guy that played like, I think it was at the time 45 NHL games or whatever
season. It was one season.
Yes, it was like one season and just less than 82. And I was just like, my thought process was just meaning that like it's crazy that we're seeing contracts for that now for guys that have just played such a short amount. I didn't mean anything against Sanderson. And obviously like Sens Nation was like, who's this moron? You work on Sportsnet. You're supposed to know like this guy's a stud. And I'm like, yes, I know. But then the more I've watched him, and obviously like we have a huge focus on the Canadian teams and the Sens in general. So like we've covered the Sens a lot throughout the last couple of years. I've probably seen all 82 of Ottawa over the last couple of years. This kid is unreal. Like unbelievable skater. First and foremost, like you can't play in today's NHL without the ability to get up and down the ice with efficiency. And especially as a defenseman, heavy teams are starting to forecheck pretty heavy. And all these mobile D, you're watching them, Sanderson, Hughes, Hudson. If you can move, like that's a start. And to add on like vision, he's got a set of hands. He has some offensive ability. Like he is the full package, man. Cannot speak well enough about this guy because I just don't think like, and at the time, maybe 3 years ago when I said that, like I truly didn't know much about him. He's a young dude. And I think you guys have all watched him progress to be, I had to do my top 50 for Sportsnet. He was in there. I don't know where I threw him in. I think he was in the 40s for me, but he's a top defenseman in the NHL, man. And the sky's the limit for him. Like he's still, he's still a young dude and still has a lot of room to grow. But he's a special player, man.
It's funny because Brady, I was at the premiere for the Amazon series and they were asking him, hey, who would you want to see like behind the scenes, like in an Amazon documentary? And he's like, not Jake, because he's kind of boring. Like all he does is like eat, sleep, breathe hockey. And he's always the last guy, after practice working on his game. I had to interview him a couple of weeks ago and I had to wait like 30 minutes because he's just shooting pucks and working on his game and just die hard. He never. You
love to see that though. Like you love to see that. I think that's so cool from young guys that have an old school mentality. Obviously, his dad played, so like he's built like that. But yeah, I love hearing stuff like that. And I actually just caught the Amazon Prime series. I've seen the first 3, but I'm going to tell you that first episode, the Tkachuks, was fire. The Four Nations part. Okay, so my brother came over like an hour after, and I'm like rewinding it. I'm like, you got to see this again. When they go through the 2 fights from Four Nations, buddy, like I was off my couch. That Styx Renegade song comes in when because Brady fought the second time. He fights Sam Bennett. Obviously, I'm Canadian, so like I would have loved the Canadian side of it too. Do you know what I mean? Like a little bit of behind, but like to hear his dad in the stands be like, oh, something's going on, and then tell his wife Chantel he's like, it's not done yet. Like some of the coolest TV and coolest production I think I've ever seen. Like I had chills from top to bottom, dude. It was awesome.
Yeah, I was the Tkachuk, the dad, when he says like to Chantel, to Chantel after Matthew, he's like, it's not done. I just was like, oh my God, he knew. And
it was very cool. It was very cool. But they're both gamers, dude. Like I said, couldn't talk enough good about them. But that episode is really cool to see a little bit of an insight into Brady and how he thinks. And yeah, it was a cool episode of TV.
With that, like, and you talked about it a bit before in terms of that line that Brady has to play in terms of being, trying not to fight, maybe trying to keep his emotions in check. And he's talked about being a bit more emotionally mature, but Ottawa just brought in a guy, Kurtis MacDermid, probably one of the top 5 or 6. See, that's what I wanted to ask you about it. Is how important do you think that is to bring in a guy like that to maybe let Tkachuk just focus on the ice and also maybe make room, as they say, as you were in the NHL and you were a fighter, right? So,
what's
that dynamic like?
Steve Saos and Travis Green, they know, right? Like they understand that this still has and plays a factor in today's day and age. I would love to say first and foremost, like I love Zach McEwen. I think he's a good, hard-working NHL player. This is not a shot to him. I'm just saying. Eventually, though, you got to start winning some of your fights. If you're going to play in that role, you can just show up, but every now and then you have to grab somebody and you have to beat the snot out of them. Like just to be like, this ain't going to happen around here anymore. And I just don't think he did that enough, but I still have like a ton of respect for what he did. But you bring in Macker. So he's a guy I played a lot against. I played in the minors against him. We were in the Pacific Division in the AHL towards the end of my career. He played for Ontario. He was with LA's farm team for a long time. We had some absolute doozies. There's another YouTube search for you after.
I'm going to go on after. Yeah.
Great fights in the minors with me and Kurtis. But good thing about Kurtis is he plays DM forward. He's a bit of a rover. So wherever you want to plug him in, you can. If you're going to go to Montreal, like I'm not saying like Arbor's going to, be the determining factor in winning or losing a game, but you really don't, for 2 reasons. One, you said Brady, but really you don't want your whole team to be sitting there like intimidated by one guy and then have your captain, who's your first line center power play guy, to have to be that guy to take that battle every time. So I think it's good that they have a more designated, heavy in there that is going to win some fights, is going to, intimidate a little bit. And, between the battles and the rivalries that are starting, I'll say starting back up here with Montreal and Toronto, like I love that MacDermid pick. I think it's a small thing, but I think it means a lot. And it tells me that Travis Green still sees a huge part for that in his lineup.
I'm curious because in the playoffs, like I remember the first game, Tim Stutzle had, I forget how many hits. He had a lot of hits, and people online were saying he should be hitting. He shouldn't be, going after scrums and kind of going after guys. Like, how important is it not just to have, we've talked about Brady, we've talked about McDermid, but have your best player kind of bring that tenacity and that kind of fight, on the ice in terms of hitting, but also after scrums. Like Timmy's always in there too in the fray.
100%. He's always in the mix. So Stutz is another guy, perfect example of like the maturation process. Like he was running around like a maniac early in that series, right? I think he had like 9 hits or something in the first game. And I think that's something where, do you need him to do it that much? Probably not, but it's good that he is. You'd rather him do more than not enough. Because at the end of the day, I was a big proponent of this too. It was tough for me because I didn't play a lot, right? Like it was tough for me to go into a locker room and be like, boys, we got to do this better. We got to do this and this and this. But if you're not the guy that's going to go out there and back up his words with like what he's going to do on the ice, I think it could be hard to take that seriously at times. And that's why I think like their leadership core does a good job at that, of like setting the tone from the top down. When you have a skill guy going out there and throwing his body around, fires you up, man. Like you're down on the 3rd, 4th line being like, this is great. Let's start rolling the lines over. Let's start giving it to them. But I think that's the maturation process for Timmy too, right? Like maybe he goes back in the playoffs, I'm assuming this year, again, and maybe he takes a slightly different approach, right? Maybe it's picking your spots a little better. But either way, like, you don't want to have guys in your room yelling, let's do this, or we got to hit more, this and that, when they're not going to go out there and do it themselves. So he's a huge part of it too. He's always in the mix. He doesn't dive as much anymore. I'm a huge fan of that.
No, he doesn't. No.
But he's got a little bit of Marchand. Like he's got a little bit of that rat in him. And he's a super effective player, super skilled too, smooth as hell. Fun to watch, man. Fun to watch.
No, it's just funny talking about guys maybe saying like, I'm gonna like lead the team into battle. You need to watch the 4th episode of Amazon and keep an eye on Mitch Marner in Game 5. There's an interesting. Anyways, that's for another time. But staying on the Stutzle point, how like in Ottawa the talk's kind of been like, okay, he's almost basically a point per game player. He became way better defensively. How hard is it for those guys to take another leap offensively without detracting from their defensive game, because he grew leaps and bounds on that side of the ice last year?
100%. I mean, that's the hardest part of hockey, especially in today's day and age, is not only just the offensive side of it, but your coach also has to feel comfortable putting you out against any other line or player in the NHL. So if he wants to match you up, and that's what you're going to get. You're going to get top matchups all night. And he's improved at that. He's gotten better at that. I'm sure they are dialing that into him because these guys just want to go. Like, defense isn't fun. No one wants to play. Like, I don't know. Like, I think that's as a forward, that was always like the funny thing is it's always like, you just want to go play in the offensive zone, touch pucks, hound it down there. Their defense isn't sexy. There's not a ton of applause or anything that comes with small defensive plays. But the more the better, dude. And the more he can round his game, like, the sky's the limit. Now you see Travis behind the bench and he can throw them on in any situation, anytime, last minute of games, last minute of periods. And you can roll it over from there. I think he's just got to continue to grow on it, to build on it, just because, I don't know, the game is so good, dude. The game is so good now that you can't be one-sided at all. You gotta think defense first, and they're improving. I think, he's due for another big one this year.
I lost it for a second, but you're back. Yeah, no, for sure. I guess, Luke, my question is like kind of talking about centermen. The Senators made a big trade in terms of bringing in Dylan Cousins. Like, how do you view him? How does he fit in the mix, do you think, this year? And how good is he? Like, is he that Buffalo guy that had 30 goals, or is he the guy for the rest of his career that's been in that like 18 to 40 point range as well?
Man, I think a lot of the Sens' success depends on how Dylan does. I think your second line center is a bit of an anchor, right? Like I talked about with Tim being able to play against anyone, but your second line center, you're not only playing against him, you're taking draws against all the big boys in the league. 30 goals shouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for Dylan. I love this kid, works his tail off. You know what I love doing too? Like, I thought about seeing him early after he got traded from Buffalo. I was down in Toronto for morning skates for Toronto and for Ottawa. I love going down there in the mornings. Like, I used to love it as a player, going out there and just, it's a lot of excitement in the building, and, you want to get the legs going a bit early. And I just remember watching him in the morning skate, and he was just so detailed and meticulous, working on different things, doing his draws after. I just think he's a really big part of this forward core moving forward. I also love that they call him Rich Cuz and
Rich Cuz
and Poor Cuz.
And Poor Cuz for Nick Cousins, yeah.
No, I think he's a huge part of it. He'll be a part of their power play and works his tail off, man. I like Josh Norris. I was a fan of Josh Norris, but I think having Dylan be a right shot too gives him a little bit more versatility. And I love his compete. I love it. That's all you can ask for, guys. At the end of the day, man, like, when you watch him play a 60-minute game, does he compete on a nightly basis? Competitive consistency is what you'll always hear coaches talk about. Like, does he bring a competitive effort every night? And he's one guy that I can honestly say he does, right? Like, might not score, might not get an assist, but the work's there. It's a huge part of the team moving forward, man. And I think, like, down the middle, that looks nice. Like, if you go from top to bottom with Shane, if Shane is going to be their third line center, like, that might be as good as a top 3 in the NHL, right? So I think the sky's the limit too for Dylan. And I just, like I said, man, I love his compete. I love the way he works.
I know you're not maybe like the prognosticator for contracts. You're not an agent, but just speaking of Shane Pinto, like he's an RFA this year. He's in line for a big payday. The cap's going up. How much would you invest in him as a guy that in many ways is your third line center, but also like one of the best third line centers? He made the Team USA kind of 40-man Olympic roster this summer. How much would you kind of invest in that position?
You know what?
With a guy like Pinto.
I mean, I'd be locking him up. I couldn't tell you for term what he's worth, but you see shades of Nick Suzuki. You see shades of Patrice Bergeron. Unreal on the penalty kill. Threat shorthanded to score. Loves the team. Team loves him. Like, why not? That's like when you look at a guy like that, you're like, look at all the positives, not just on the ice that he brings to the team. Like you can tell how much the guys love him. Speaks very well. His interviews are great. I just think when you're looking at your priorities and you're, Steve Stais up there trying to figure out who to keep here and who do we want to build this team around, like Shane Pinto would be right at the top of the list for me. Well, I hope he stays there because, like I said, that's a deep center core with Shane in there, and I'd be locking him up for as many as he's willing to take.
I can tell from being in the room, he is very well liked, and he's a really nice guy. He's a funny guy too. You can always get him kind of badgering with guys within the room. He's definitely well liked. I guess with that, like when you look at the team as a whole, I don't think they're in that cup contention window right now, but maybe in a year or two from now. What are the areas that you feel like this team needs to improve upon and get better in heading into the season?
I mean, I think this, but I'm a little nervous about them in net. I think obviously Allmark coming over last year. You want to see him stay healthy. And then is it going to be Miralainen? Is that what it looks? Sogaard's down. So Miralainen, I know he had a tough go his last preseason start. Probably you build in today's NHL from the net out. So that's where it starts. But that is a nice looking young decor, right? From top to bottom. Bringing Jordan Spence in, I think is cool. And that's huge as well. I love Clevin. Like I love Tyler Clevin. Yeah. Like he's a gamer too. Depth, right? You always hear about depth. And I think the model for consistency and the model for depth right now is the Florida Panthers from top to bottom. They're able to roll over 4 lines and be able to play those against any other top lines. And I think Ottawa's top 6 is pretty set right now. I'm not sure who's going to play on that right side on that. Is it Zetterlund?
It's Zetterlund and Giroux. Those are the 2 guys that have been alternating on that top line. Like today we had Zetterlund, but Giroux went down to the 3rd line. But
I mean, there's room to bring, someone from the outside in, depending on how well they're doing. But I think it's depth. Like they're on the right track on the back end. Hoping Allmark's going to have a big stellar year. But I just think a couple depth pieces like that Lars Eller signing that's a tidy piece of depth signing. Like I think he's a guy that kind of goes maybe underappreciated, underrated over the years, even for how old he is. He does a great job just down the lineup. Guys like that, filling out the roster a bit just so you can have 4 that you can roll over at any time. But they're headed in that direction. And like I say, man, Steve knows what he's doing. But it's depth all the time. If you don't have unless you have like Connor McDavid and Leon in your top line or something like that.
But that's kind of been the discussion in Ottawa is like they have all these really good players, but I outlined a story at sportsnet.ca. They really only have 3 superstars, right? And I don't think any of them will be as good as Connor McDavid and probably not as good as Leon Draisaitl and Sanderson, Tkachuk, Stutzle, but they're a heck of a trio, right? So how important do you think it is for them to add an external guy, or do you think, as the Senators have been saying, they have to add from within?
You look at the way they're built now, like you can always add, but at the same time, maybe you don't want to mess with that chemistry at all as well. It'll all depend on how they start here. Like they're a team that I'm super curious about just over the first couple weeks to months here to see how they start playing out, because the Atlantic's wide open. Florida with the injuries, they've played a lot of hockey over the last 3-4 years. Tampa's a wagon, but beyond that, I mean, Is Toronto going to be at the top again? Who knows? Matthews had a down year last year. I believe in Toronto. I think they're a good hockey team, but past that, like, buddy, this is wide open. The Bruins are faltering for the first time in years. Like, Montreal is trending upward, but I think it's wide open in this division. And as soon as they start piling up some wins, I think that'll really give some faith to the management core that maybe we should be, looking to add here. But the way their roster's set right now, like, I like it. Just go with what you have for now, and see where you think you need to improve over the next, weeks to months.
Yeah, no, I asked Steve Stais. I had an interview with him last week, and he never really likes to say anything, to kind of square on the peg, like it's pretty mild mannered. It's the opposite of Pierre Dorn. There's no proclamations. But I asked him, what are you going to do if this team's in a playoff position, in a good position in the play, heading into the deadline? Are you going to add? And he seemed pretty open to it, right? He always says I'm open to every possibility, which kind of defeats the purpose of my question. Yeah. But otherwise, I do think that they're going to try to go, maybe not all in, but they're going to try to add. And I think they know what they need to improve upon. It's just probably another goal scorer, another guy that can just kind of hit the back of the net. Because as good as Giroux is, he's not prime Giroux. Zetterlund, I think, is a good player. I don't know how good he is, right? So they have a bit of question marks. I don't know what you think of this, where it's like you have a lot of good, but you don't have a lot of great. How do you make sense of that, especially in today's NHL when there's so much talent?
No, I agree with you. They could probably use someone to put the puck in the net a little more, but you know what? I agree with Steve in a sense. I think too, down the line, this is a chat for further around deadline, but if your team's in the mix, GMs that go out and help you out, that sends a real message to your room that he believes in you too. And I think like that goes a long way. I think teams that are right around the mix, if they go out and get some help, that's your management team being like, boys, you worked your tails off for the last 5-6 months. Here you go. Like, here's a bone. So all he can ask from them is to get themselves in a position for him to be able to help them. You do your part, I'll do mine. And you hope that they both keep their ends of the bargain, because at the end of the day, like I said, like they could probably use some more help goal scoring. But we'll see, man. Like, you never know. Guys could come out of nowhere and start scoring like a Zetterlund. You have no idea maybe what his ceiling or what to expect from him is. But it'll be interesting down the line here.
Just maybe my last one, just on Tkachuk, because we probably by the time this goes out, we'll find out if he's made the roster or not. But I'm curious what you think about how important it is for a young player to maybe not jump to the NHL, even if they're maybe mostly ready, kind of like the Draisaitl example you gave earlier in the show. Like, how important is it to maybe marinate in the AHL, even if you can maybe, for the most part, play in the NHL, but just to not get kind of smothered and keep your confidence up and then come when you're fully ready?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you if you made the team, because I wasn't even sure if he's on their roster yet. You know what, man? Like, so I went into this a bit on our Sportsnet thing, just because I love having young guys in the mix and in the room. Like the one we were going over was Cowan in Toronto, who's a young kid. I just think like if a kid like Tkachuk comes in, he does everything you ask, plays some good hockey. How do you say no to him? But at the same time, what are you going to stick him on the third pair? No power play. Like, is that better for him than going down to Belleville and being on the first pair and playing 25 minutes a game? The great thing that Ottawa has going for them too is their AHL team is now in Belleville down the road. Like, rather than it, I don't know if you ever made any trips to Binghamton on any of your vacation
I've been
time,
before.
I wouldn't recommend it to a ton of people. It's a bit of a dark, cold place, but listen, like a lot of these AHL teams, they used to be so far away, and calling guys up and down used to be a huge burden. But now you have your team right down the highway. So your management, your brass is keeping tabs on these guys. It's not like you're sending them across the country. Like, it's easy to go down, see him. It's easy to bring him up and down. Little time in the AHL is never a bad thing for anyone. I truly believe that, no matter how good, skilled, or ready the player thinks he is, go ride a bus in the minors for a bit, and you're not taking any NHL time for granted. You know what I mean? Like, there's a big difference between walking up the tarmac to a private jet to go play in the National Hockey League to, playing 3-3s in Belleville freaking Laval or wherever you're going, but from a guy who spent 6-7 years in the minors, I do know it builds some character, and it's never a bad thing to let a guy go down, and even they could say to him, like, go down and dominate, man. Like, go down and dominate. Show us that you deserve to be here, because the kid's a hell of a player. And you know what? He's going to be on that Sens blue line. Might not be right this second, but AHL the jungle, man. Go experience it for yourself.
Speaking from experience, I keep thinking about Sanderson and Yakimchuk as just like the twin towers of doom.
Could be unreal.
2 years.
Well, that's what you think about the D. You talked about Stutzle with the D side, and now we're talking about an actual defenseman playing the D side. Like, Hudson got away with it a bit last year. I think he can skate his way out of trouble. Quinn Hughes, when he was young, still does it. Like, he barely plays in his own end because he gets the puck, he turns around, and if he has no walls, he's gone, right? Like, he's gone. Same thing with Sanderson. Yakimchuk doesn't have those feet. He has the vision, he has the skills, but I don't think his feet are as good as those guys. So he's got to be more efficient. And like, forechecking in the NHL, I talked about how heavy it is. Tampa leads the way, Florida leads the way in that category in the Atlantic, where puck's dumped in, you're turning back. There are two absolute mutants coming down, waiting to throw you through the end wall, and you do that 30 times a night, right? And it's like, that's an adjustment. Zane Parekh is a guy that I've watched throughout preseason here, who quite honestly has really struggled with the pace. Like, his skill is undeniable. They put him on the power play. It's undeniable how skilled he is, but they put him at 5-on-5, and he's going back for pucks at the same pace that he went back for them in junior. And it's just like, it ain't gonna happen, right? It's a step above. You have to almost know the play you're gonna make before you make it, and process the game at a speed that you never have before. So you either throw him into the fire, you let him play 8 games, maybe give him some regular season games. But if he's going to be on the third pair, if he's going to be in and out of the lineup, not playing a ton, it's just all up to them on what they think the better development path for him would be.
And that's interesting, just with Yakimchuk, who, like Parex's an offensive guy, like in camp and in the preseason games, he hasn't been super loud in terms of how his offense is translated. But in his own end, which he's really tried to improve upon, he's been much more quieter. There's not too many poor mistakes, bad. He's had a couple wobbles, but it's just been much more sound than last year, where he had the flashes offensively, but in his own end, I think he was a bit slow. So it's just interesting to hear your perspective, where you notice, like, it's when there's two mutants coming down at you.
Yeah, and it's a huge thing with those guys is confidence too, right? Like, here's a guy that's incredibly talented offensively, but maybe he doesn't want to make that play that he would usually make, because if he turns it over and makes a mistake, you're on the next bus to Belleville, or you're in the stands the next game, where you don't exactly have the same leash that you used to have. Jake Sanderson, if he turns over the puck and on his second shift, he's going to play his third shift. He's not going anywhere. So he already knows that he's allowed to challenge himself to make mistakes. Whereas if you're a younger guy, your leash is way shorter. Like, one mistake, okay, maybe 2, you're done. Like, you might not play another shift the rest of the period, the rest of the game. You have less trust with the coaching staff, especially your D coach. When Travis looks down to his D coach, and I think it's Bomber. It's Bomber.
Yeah, it's Bomber.
And he goes, am I good to, throw it? And he goes, like, he just doesn't have it tonight, whatever. I think confidence is a huge thing. Confidence breeds confidence. So as soon as he starts feeling confident to make plays, I think you'll see the real Carter Yakimchuk, because I would imagine it's a pretty nervous kid right now, just going through it with the pace and the adjustment.
Maybe just my last one, just because I thought of something. This team is really young, right? Maybe not 20-year-old young, but they are a young team. How much credit does Green have as a coach for last season, and then hopefully into this season, for kind of turning those players like Stutzle, Sanderson, Tkachuk into overall much more well-rounded players, while also kind of letting them progress while also trying to win at the same time? Like, that balance always seems so hard as a coach.
Yeah, and I love that it's Travis there. It's nothing against coaches that didn't play. Like, I always, John Cooper example, like John Cooper never played, but obviously has a ton of success. But guy like Travis that like played and did it, And, you know, we talked about like going into the dressing room and asking your guys to do something that you wouldn't do. Like, here's a guy that did it for a long time, like was a good pro, good NHLer. And now he's the guy behind the bench. It's like having another veteran in your locker room, like basically setting the example. And I think, like, to me, it starts with G probably in the room in terms of like a guy that is kind of your communication between the coach and your room. But it starts with Travis, and like, I hung on to coaches' every words, man. I always, you know, I don't know. I never missed a word. Like I wanted to try to soak in everything they said and really take in the influence that they brought. And some coaches are easier to do that than others. And I think Travis is one that it demands a lot from them, but there's also a human there too. Like, he's a personable guy. And I just think at the end of the day, like, he's a guy that played and did it. So I think it's much easier for a young team to like Google or YouTube Travis Green and you see him in, you know, a Leaf jersey or whatever, like running around. Like, it's like, cool, man. He did it too. Like, he gets it. So I'm sure he's such a great sounding board for the young guys, being able to knock on his door, go in the office. If, you know, if you want to look at tape, you had a question about a play, whatever it may be. I'm sure he's a great sounding board to have there for a young player in the league.
It's interesting because 2 years ago, when the Sens were struggling, they didn't take that jump. I remember kind of the discussion was the Sens need a hard ass, right? And they brought in Travis Green, and he's more of that mold, to say the least, right? And I remember going up to JBD, who's not with the team anymore, and saying he was a very pleasant, super nice guy. I love Jacob Bernard, Docker, as a person, and saying, hey, like, how much do you want to be like kind of lit up the ass with a hard-nosed coach? And he's like, I'd love it. And I'm like, really? Like, interesting. Like, not that JBD's soft or anything like that, but just that wasn't the answer that I expected. He's like, yeah, I want to be pushed. I want to be. And you look at Thomas Chabot. He's talked about how much he loved that Green came in.
Yeah.
It's like, you need to be better defensively. You need to change things. And Chabot's like, yeah, I love that. Let's do it. Right.
Well, and everyone's different, right? Like, Dallas Eakins said it very well for me towards the end of my career. He coached me in San Diego in the minors in 18-19, and we were having a good chat just about how much the game's changed. Our team was so young at the time. And he just said that the game's changed for me as a coach in the sense that I am no longer coaching a team. I'm coaching like 20 to 23 different individuals. Like, I have to coach guys individually because what is right for player A might not be the same approach for player B, right? Like JBD loves being yelled at. There are guys, young guys, that if you yell at them, they are going to tail between the legs and they're done, right? Like they will physically shut it down. They do not like confrontation. There's guys that need softer approaches. There's guys that need more constructive criticism. So you really have to be able not just manage your players, but manage the personalities as well. And you know, I was a bit of a mix for that. I think, like, at the end of the day, like, if you're not going good, like, you should be lit up. Your coach should be lighting you up every once in a while. But to hear that all day, every day, like, that really starts to wear on you. And I think it starts to really fall on deaf ears when it's like, oh man, here we go again. Like, we're doing suicides again. He's barking at us. He's yelling at us. He's screaming at us. That can be tough, like day after day, week after week. So it's interesting to hear that, because I know he's hard on him, but you want a guy that's hard but has some humanity at the end of the day too, right? Like, you want to be able to go talk to him. And
JBD said this before Green came in, so I don't want to speak to their relationship, just to be clear. This was when Jacques Martin came in, but it's interesting where he's talked about the accountability part, and I think that's in. You know, you don't want a guy just to be up your ass, just to be up your ass, right?
100%.
It sounds like you want a guy being, okay, we're playing, we've lost 4 in a row. Okay, be up my ass, or I made a bad mistake. But if you're just,
so I'll tell you a quick story of exactly what we're talking about. Okay, so I got to get in. Played 2 games. So we were in Phoenix. I was with Edmonton. We were in Phoenix. I didn't play very well. Didn't play a ton. We got on a flight. We fly to San Jose. We get to San Jose the next day. We were 1 o'clock skate, and we're doing the Indy 500 around the rink before we start, where everyone's just freaking gliding around. And Mac T comes up and taps me, and he's like, hey kid, pulls me kind of aside. He's like, you were awful last night. Like, it was like, I couldn't put you back out there. And so I'm like dejected, right? Like, my head, spinning. I'm like, I don't know what to say. But then he continues, and I told Mac, like, I still tell him later, this was one of the most impactful conversations for me, because he was like, the play can't die with you. You're a big guy. You're 6'4". When you get in, you get below the line. I need you holding on to pucks. You cannot be the last play that the puck makes in the offensive zone, and they're going back the other way. I need you to hold on to pucks. You got to be better with possession. But he's like, I liked your work though. And he's like, go have a good skate today, you know? And it was like, so he told me what he needed better from me, told me that, right, like ripped me at the start, but told me what he needed me to do and where he needed me to be better. And to me, that was like unreal. I was like, okay, it wasn't just a guy that was like, you were trash last night, right? Like, you're a joke, you know, like, and then I skate off like dejected. It was like, I need this, like, I need more. And it's just like guys like that, I think end up being very successful in their roles, just because of, like I said, like a little bit of humanity and some teaching at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I've kept you long enough, Luke. Thanks so much for taking the time and doing this. I hope to hear more about the McDavid stuff from you on the air for Sportsnet, and just excited to see you on the air. You're one of the best to do it for us at Sportsnet, if I put my Sportsnet cap on right now. And thanks so much for taking the time and doing this. We really appreciate it on the show.
No, thanks for having me, guys.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Sens Spotlight on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.